Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess and I have made a big mistake today. And what is that mistake? It's recording at this time of day. Whew, it's warm up here. Not as bad as it has been, but it's still toasty. So I've always got my emotional support fans going. But if you can see from the title of the video, I don't know what it is yet, but we're going to be talking about this article that I read from The Atlantic. And I believe it's called The End of Reading. Now, it is a pretty lengthy article. You can also listen to it. But because this was talking about the end of reading, I was like, I'm going to read it. And I read the entire thing. It does start off talking about like the Library of Alexandria. And so there's like a little bit of history in the beginning, and then it gets more into present day. And so before I get into it, if you have not read it, I would love you to comment down below what you think the article is talking about. I feel like it's pretty easy to surmise from the title, but still, if you pause here, if you haven't read it, what do you think it's talking about? I thought it was interesting, and I have some thoughts about it. Obviously, I'm not going to read the entire thing here, just going to give my general thoughts and probably add in some excerpts from the article. But without further ado, let's get into it. I hope you've been drinking your water. Okay, it's been hot. It's been toasty. This is just plain water. You know, if for some reason you're doing outdoor activities, you know, like a sport or hiking or something, you know, maybe on that day you need an electrolyte. And you know that I believe in Liquid IV. I do have a code if you would like to save. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a scientist. I don't think it's something you need to drink every day, but sometimes it can be helpful. Just throwing that out there. Okay. The article is actually called The End of Reading is Here by Rose Horowitz, okay? So again, it starts with some bit of history about the Library of Alexandria and how it's lost. So some 2,000 years later, under very different circumstances, the darkness is gathering again. Americans, once members of a proudly literate society, read much less than they used to. According to the National Endowment for the Arts, which conducts the most comprehensive survey of the nation's reading habits, fewer than half of all adults reporting having read a book of any kind in 2022. Only 38% read a novel or short story. A study analyzing 236,000 responses to the American Time Youth Survey found that the proportion of Americans who read for pleasure on any given day fell from 28% in 2004 to 16% in 2023. Okay, what I would like to say is that 236,000 people, I think, is a pretty good sample size, but that's not obviously it's not a reflection of the entire American populace. Now, I do agree generally with what is being said in this article, but I just have to wonder, where are y'all polling? Because I have never received a poll. I've never gotten an email. I've never gotten a letter. No one has asked me how much I read. I'm like, so where are y'all getting these polling numbers from? Interesting. So anyway, the article talks about obviously the history of when it was not common for people to be literate, and then the invention of the printing press. More people became literate. Obviously, there was a race and class divide there, especially if we're talking about in America. It was, you were not allowed to read as an enslaved person. And then a lot of Black people were illiterate. And moving on, as we've gone further through civil rights and as time has passed, more people have become literate. But now she's saying we're in something called a post-literate society, which is very interesting. And she discusses that a lot of things I think I've mentioned before in other videos, some things maybe I haven't, but changes in reading in schools from elementary through high school and even into college, university level, where teachers are not recommending or not having their students read full novels. They're reading excerpts or just summaries from stories instead of full novels that, you know, are appropriate for their age range. And that's kind of terrifying. I've also heard this on social media. I've heard, you know, pushback from higher ups and teachers who do want to teach a full-length novel and are being told not to do that. Reports from institutions, and not even, and this is not to judge colleges because there's, you know, just a whole range, but from institutions like Harvard, UCLA, like big name, highbrow schools. UCLA isn't an Ivy, but still, that are saying that they have incoming students who cannot read a full novel, who are struggling to read and interpret, infer. That's part of literacy. I think that sometimes that gets lost in the conversation. Literacy is not just being able to literally read the word on the page. It's being able to read a sentence, read a paragraph, and understand, to make inferences, to be able to pick up on subtext, on foreshadowing. Like if you're reading a whole story, it's more than just literally being able to read the word on the page. And apparently that's just on the decline. There was even a mention of I don't know what university it was, but students who were coming into humanities degrees, like English degrees, and are struggling to read the text that these professors have been recommending for this degree for years. Some of it, of course, is going to be in Old English or in things that are not like how common English is written. And sure, those are going to be a little more challenging, but they're like, they just don't have either the patience, or they don't have, I don't even know what the word would be, to get through these texts. And then that's concerning, and they want summaries of it. They put it into a chat GPT to summarize it or change it into a more easier to read language for them. I'm like, this is terrifying. And so she does talk about the use of AI too in the article a little later. But so there's mentions of schools from, again, elementary through university, how they've changed, just literacy rates have dropped overall. The article did talk about also just historical things where people were kind of sounding an alarm when the newspaper came out, and that people thought that was going to be ruined because people weren't going to be focused on novels or literary magazines. And then they got the newspaper that was filled with these gossip columns and sports. Then obviously we get to the TV, which then cuts down on reading time as it became something in more homes, and so people are watching television more instead of reading. And now obviously we are in just nothing but digital age where you have television, but it's not like it was 20 years ago when you had to, if you wanted to watch something, you had to watch it when it was airing. If you wanted to watch a movie, you had to go to the movie theater, or you had to go to a video store to rent a video. Now everything's on demand. We have Netflix, everything has a streaming app, so you can watch it at any time, and they just nonstop play. We have the social media apps that all have the short form videos on them, so we can continuously scroll. Even, what was it, 10 years ago? I don't know when Instagram changed. It could have been further back. But when we had the chronological timeline, but there used to be a time that it stopped. It was like, that's all. That was all of the updates from the people that you followed, and it was the end. And you're like, okay, that's it. And you got off. Once it changed into like an algorithmic page where you're getting recommendations and things that you don't follow, the feed is endless. Same thing with TikTok. And obviously YouTube has their YouTube Shorts version because nobody can just be their own app. Everyone has to be everyone else. It's boring. So again, more distractions that are taking people away from reading. And of course, with the advent of more of the on-demand television shows and with social media apps, attention has gone down. Attention span. It is quoted in here. Attention spans, like some different numbers of decreases, but I mean, I understand that. It is addicting because to read, you have to singularly focus. You've got to put everything else down. I usually like instrumental music if I'm reading. I have learned to read with like noise in the background. I don't prefer that, but it's something you really have to give your focus to. You can't just like put on it like you do, put on a show, scroll on your phone, right? even, and this is, I consider audiobooks reading, okay? I listen to audiobooks, but even an audiobook, most of the time you're able to do something else while you're listening to the book. Reading a book with your eyeballs means you have just got to lock in on that book. Now, there was a part in here where it said there was a study that stated if you read on any kind of screen that you understood less than if you read from a book. I'll need to find that because I've never heard of that, because I love an ebook and I read that, obviously books from the library, and then I read physical books. So I don't know, but obviously lots of distractions and why people aren't reading. And then we also have AI. There is generative AI that people use to write things as simple as a text message, an email, an Instagram caption, up to papers for university and books. Loosely, books. There's so many on Amazon that are being sold that are just AI generated slop. And that is also ties in, I think, to reading. I don't know the science behind it. I am not a great writer. I do write things sometimes. I would like to practice that skill more, but people are losing that skill as well because they just want to do a shortcut. They want to type in a prompt and have AI generate something for them. And it's just like, my Lord. And so she also talks about just like kind of a cognitive decline that comes with that. Now, obviously there are, I think, a few studies out, but they're going to be new because we haven't had this generative AI for that long for there to be long-term studies. But the studies that are out do show that it does like decrease your brain function because you have to use your brain. It's just like when you learn something, learn an instrument, learn a language. If you don't continue to practice and keep doing that thing, it's going to go away. It's the same thing, I think, with your brain and reading and writing and not practicing that. It's going to make it harder when you do come back to a book or you do try to write something yourself or you haven't been using your own brain to do those things previously. I think this person is pretty young. I feel like they're Gen Z who wrote this because she said that she was like in first grade when the first iPhone came out. I think something that is not touched on this in this article that is very important is the socio-political context behind it. And while I think all of the things like social media and everything taking our attention, TV on demand, less people are reading, I think there's also a part, like I said, socio-political. Reading is political, right? As a Black woman, years ago, it was illegal for someone like me to know how to read. So like, I am very grateful that my mom was very set on me and my sisters becoming readers and started us off at a young age, and it's lasted my whole life. I know everyone doesn't have that. But I just am really grateful for the opportunity to be able to read and understand and read all these amazing stories. But there is like, and it's been going on for a long time. We can argue on who it started with, Reagan, a long concerted effort to essentially dumb down the population. And because they want a uneducated, functionally illiterate working class. That's just true. If you look at, especially in the United States is where I'm really speaking, looking at the No Child Left Behind, which sounds good in theory, but it has turned into people or children, instead of being left behind if they weren't up to the standards of, let's say they're in the 3rd grade and they're doing whatever testing or they're doing whatever assignments or whatever they're doing in class, and they're not measuring up to where they should be at the end of the year, instead of holding them back like they used to do, now they just move them forward. I have some family members who are teachers, guidance counselors, principals, and they tell me all of these new policies on how they can't give grades lower than like a 60. If they think a child should be held back, they can tell that to the parent, but the parent is the one who ultimately has a decision whether or not they're held back, and most of the time parents want them to go forward. This results in kids getting to 7th, 8th, 10th grade, making it to high school, and they are years behind. And then that's just going to make it more difficult on the students who are at the right reading level and the kids who are behind. Because how does one teacher in a classroom is able to devote enough time to somebody who is in the 10th grade but reading at a 5th grade level, and someone who is actually at their level and probably some kids above it? How are you supposed to do that? And so it's just been this like systematic thing that is slowly over time is just getting worse and worse, in conjunction with the teachers not teaching full books and everything being based on these standardized tests, instead of really around the students' knowledge and development and stuff in the classroom. And you gotta take this with a grain of salt. I am not a teacher, okay? I just have family members who are teachers and I hear this information, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying, all of this makes sense why so many people are struggling with reading. Added to that, as the economy continues to get worse, and it's been getting worse for a lot of time, and there are parents who have to work more than one job, or they have to work a lot of hours, that is then lessening the time they're able to spend with their children, helping them with schoolwork, or, you know, starting them off and reading with them from the time they are young. That's not to say that that's every parent's reality, but it is reality for a lot of them. And then I didn't even touch on the schools in America and how they are not equally funded. There are so many schools that are underfunded, so that just cuts into any kind of programs that might help kids, cuts into pay for teachers, for supplies. It just, there's just so much. And as long as I've been alive and conscious and aware, reading has never been popular, right? Like, what I see now online is the most reading has ever been like looked at as cool. Granted, when I was growing up, obviously we didn't have the internet like that, so would I know? But it seems, especially 2020 and beyond, that reading's really had an uptick. Now, I know that the book community still is a small community within the larger population of humanity, but it feels like there's more readers than there ever was. So then this also, I don't say this is wrong, but it just is interesting, especially with it's a good sample size, okay? It's not 40 people, but still. When you look at what especially TikTok has done for reading, Barnes & Noble, they say it in this article, has opened 60 more stores. There's been a lot more indie bookstores that have opened. Physical book sales have gone up. But in the article, she says that is from a very small group of people. That's like 20% of the adult population is funding all of those sales. And I'm like, well, I guess I could see that. But it does feel like there are more readers. In this article, she also mentions how not even that less people are reading, that people are reading, but a lot of the books are more simplistic. The sentences are shorter and, very straightforward. Of course, a lot of the popular books right now. And then that's just another thing, which I think those books are fine. We need those. We need short, easy to consume popcorn reads, medium difficulty reads, and then really dense things. I think we need the gamut, just like we need graphic novels and manga and picture books and chapter books and novellas and massive tomes and ones in the middle. Massive tomes only if they earn their length, okay? We need the range of it. But when people are just reading the very simplistic, tells you everything, doesn't show you kind of books, very simple structure, just like very standard, and that's like all you read, I can see how that lends to just not having a strong mind, I guess. I don't know if that sounds bad. Because this is the internet, I will say I couldn't come up with a good phrase for that, and I understand that there are some people who have very stressful jobs or very stressful lives, so they only want to read really easy things, and that's fine. Like I said, they should all exist, okay? Or if you try something else outside of that, it's just being really much harder to read that because you're not used to that. You're not stretching that muscle of trying a book that is outside of your comfort zone, whether that's fiction or nonfiction. So I like that they address that, because it is a conversation that's gone around in the book community that's like, you kind of got to be on your tiptoes to not come off elitist about it, because again, it's a good thing that people are reading, like, period. That's a great thing that people are reading. And like, whether it's Frida McFadden or you're reading Octavia Butler, like, it's great to be reading, but again, we should be reading a mixture of things so that you can get it all. Short, fun, complicated, dense, something that makes you really think, something you really have to break down and discuss. Yeah, I'm always gonna be on team diversify your reading in that way. From different backgrounds, religious, ethnic, different sexualities, grown up in different parts of the world, translated work, different genres, fiction and nonfiction, short, long, dense, easy. Like, you need to diversify your reading. I think that is going to give you the best reading experience and really just like, elevate your mind. And I've seen other people online talk about that another divide that we are seeing, and it's going to continue to grow, is going to be with literacy. As more people, if you're going through a school system where you're never having to read a full novel, you're getting summaries, you have generative AI things that can write papers for you. I mean, these kids are getting into college. Your whole life, you really have to think. There was a comment, it was like, back in my day when we had to cheat, you still had to think and read a little bit to cheat. You had to type in your own thing, find your way to a Wikipedia page or something, or to a Spark Notes. You still had to do some reading. Now you can just type in a prompt and it give you something. So like, it's very different. But that is just going to lead to another divide of people that are literate and people who are illiterate. It's going to continue to grow. It's really sad to think about. But they also mentioned in this article that in this post-literate society that we live in, that Orange thing is the first post-literate president, and he won't be the last, obviously, but that he has succeeded because people really get information and get news from short clips online. And the strategy really is there's no nuance, and so people just take things face value and who agree with what he says, and they just believe what he says. They're like, yes, this is what I believe, and they go with it, instead of maybe someone who looks at this thing, takes time, goes and does their own research, is able to read through things, see between what is being fed to you and like what the reality is, or that is kind of a gray area and it's not as clear as they're presenting it. And if you look at all of that and the trajectory of where we've just been going as a nation, unfortunately, it makes sense on how that thing became the president. And it's just really sad because I'm just like, you guys, it's like, how do we fix this problem? And that wasn't in here, and I don't think that's on her to come up with a solution, but this isn't the Library of Alexandria, right? We're not going to lose text. She says it here. Everything, everything has been archived online. We're not in danger of losing the books, losing the words, but we are in danger of there being fewer people who are actually reading the words. And we don't even, besides like cognitive ability and intelligence, because they do mention in this article that like IQs have dropped. And isn't the IQ test, wasn't that kind of racist? I don't remember. I've never taken one, and I'm like, who's still taking an IQ test? Okay, whatever. But in addition to that, it's another thing about like empathy and just being able to be a more open-minded person when you read across genres and from different people and people in different worlds from different parts of the world. And that's also really important. Not to say, and never to say, that TV is like a terrible medium, because I love television, okay? I love television, from a terrible reality show up to a really great scripted show. I think that TV is a wonderful medium that you can learn a lot from, TV, movie, documentary. However, it is still not going to work the same muscles, and you're not going to get the same thing as you would from reading a book. So I just want to say that. Lastly, I will add that generative AI has also infiltrated fan fiction, and it has been going on for a little while. Recently, I don't know if it was like an article or just a post of someone exposing some big fanfic writers, I think maybe in the Heated Rivalry fandom, I could be wrong, but basically showing how you could find the code for Claude, which is a generative AI, in that. And I was already seeing this. Some people, at least, I hesitate to say have the decency, but have the decency to mark in their tags on AO3 that is generated with AI. Some people do me the favor of their art is very clearly AI generated, so that I know if you're generating that that I'm just gonna assume that you're writing it also generated, but it's just really sad. Fan fiction literally fan fiction is supposed to be passionate fans of a thing writing a story because they love it so much and they want more, they want a different ending, they want something else. I hate generative AI and everything, but in fan fiction, it is, oh my God, it hurts the most. It hurts the most. What do you mean? If you don't have the passion, the longing, the desire, the love to take the time, people are writing 300, 400,000 word fics on their phone, okay? And you're gonna type it up. God, it hurts me. It hurts. Anyway, I'm gonna leave off with this. The threat of apathy remains. What we're losing is the ability and inclination to read those texts. An astonishing wealth of information and wisdom has been bequeathed to us. What we'll do with this inheritance is up to us. So, I've said a lot of things, but if you're watching this video, you're most likely already a reader. Unless you've randomly stumbled across this video, then hello. And if you are a reader, especially if you only read the same kind of book, even if you're reading only super dense, super long, epic fantasies, I challenge you to try something different. To try a romance, to try a middle grade fantasy, to try a manga or a graphic novel. If you're only a popcorn thriller reader, to try maybe a more literary thriller or something science fiction. If you only ever read fiction, I challenge you to read a nonfiction book. Same if you only read nonfiction, to find a fiction book. It is worth it. I'm just telling you, it's worth it to step outside of your comfort zone. But if you're already a reader, well, we're a cool subculture, so keep doing your thing. I think my camera's gonna overheat because it's warm up here. But I don't know. Do the people around you read? My friends online obviously read, but in my real life, not as much. Some people. I don't know. What do you think about the article? Share your thoughts below. Thank you so much for watching. Stay blessed, hydrated, moisturized, and sunscreen. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.